We've just had the news of the killing of Osama Bin Laden. Do you think this represents a turning point in the war on terror?
Fundamentally, I don't. I think it's a big boost for Obama in his elections, and I think it'll strengthen his hand in the kind of debates he's having about the future of the war on terror. But I don't really believe it's going to. I don't think it's going to fundamentally shift US foreign policy, and I don't think it's going to do anything fundamental to make the world a safer place. Because the key question is the question of the grievances that people feel about what the US and the other Western powers have been doing over the last years and decades. And unfortunately, the occupation of Afghanistan, the absolute catastrophe that was created by the Western powers in Iraq, and the bombing of Libya, and continued support for the Israeli repression of the Palestinians, all of these things understandably create an absolute massive well of anger and bitterness across the region, and therefore I don't think this is going to fundamentally change things. I think the US are stuck on, and their supporters are still stuck on a highly interventionist foreign policy, and I think the anger that people feel across the region is understandably very, very high. So no, I don't, and this is reflected actually in the speeches that was made both by Hillary Clinton and Obama in the last 24 hours, where they both kind of outlined a continuing aggressive foreign policy stance that they clearly want to continue, where they believe the US has the right to intervene anywhere in the world to try and remove governments, to try and remove presidents, and decide what happens in regions that are important to it. As long as that goes on, the world is going to be a very dangerous place.
Do you think that the killing of Bin Laden can be counted as a success, particularly in the war in Afghanistan and Pakistan?
They will try and flag this up as a success, and in a narrow military sense it clearly is a success for them, although it's an incredible fact that they haven't been able to find, in my opinion, they haven't been able to find Bin Laden for 10 years. But in terms of this providing any kind of solution to the problems of volatility and anger and bitterness that exist across Central Asia and the Middle East, I don't think this is a success at all. The hypocrisy at the heart of the whole operation is well illustrated by the fact that on the one hand Obama makes a speech saying the killing of Bin Laden has made the world a safer place. On the other hand, the administration immediately raises the threat level, the possibility of attacks. So, there's complete contradiction at the heart of the policy. What the Western powers need to be doing is 180 degrees opposite to what they are doing. They need to end the occupation of Afghanistan. They need to stop the bombing of Libya. And they need to send a message out that they are not going to interfere anymore in the affairs of other sovereign countries. That's the only way to actually make the world a safer place and to decrease the level of violence.
This morning, the papers here were full of pictures of Obama and Hillary Clinton watching a screen as the operation took place, as if it was a kind of video game or something. And then there were scenes of much flag waving in various cities in America. What I'm wondering is what you think of this atmosphere, what it does to our own societies.
One of the most pernicious things about the war on terror domestically has been the ramping up of hostility and demonisation of the Muslim communities in Western countries, which has kind of paralleled the war. Partly because it's been used as a kind of war propaganda, as a mechanism to try and create the atmosphere whereby the wars, unpopular wars, what are essentially unpopular wars, can be conducted. So that's continuing, and I guess there'll be a kind of surge in Islamophobia in the next few days and weeks. And one of the things Stop the War is doing is it's part of a network of organisations that's calling a conference against Islamophobia in Europe and internationally in 2 or 3 weeks' time on May the 21st. So I think that event becomes extremely important now as one way of expressing and developing resistance to the kind of new racism.
what do you think of what the relevance of Al-Qaeda is now that we've had these huge movements across the Middle East and North Africa with the Arab Spring, and the fact that even a US spokesperson after Bin Laden was killed drew this point and said that maybe Al-Qaeda is actually quite irrelevant compared to what's going on in the world now?
Well, I think that's true. I think that I think two things. First of all, what really matters when it comes to the fight against terrorism is not the physical networks such as they are, and we don't really have that much information about how strong they are or how well organised they are. The crucial question is the question of the grievances that give rise to it in the first place. And the problem is that the way foreign policy is being conducted by the Western powers is only going to deepen the sense of outrage and anger that people feel right across the Muslim world against the role of the West. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I think it's absolutely right that the democratic movements, the uprisings in Tunisia and Egypt and Yemen and Bahrain and elsewhere, they really do provide the possibility and the potential for there to be a kind of sea change in the way politics operates across the region. Perhaps not in the way that the US thinks, but they can open the door for a real transformation of the region, and actually for self-determination for ordinary people in those countries to actually decide what happens in their countries without the interference of the Western powers, and actually what happens to the resources that exist in their countries. And that really is the source of hope, I believe. I believe in the region. And by the way, it's that force of democratic change from below that can provide an alternative to Al-Qaeda for people who feel very, very angry about what's happened to the West. So in all those ways, we welcome, and I think it's very important to show solidarity for these fantastic movements of people power across the region.